She entered the lecture hall quietly, a simple woman in a plain gray cardigan. At first glance, she didn't belong there. When the elite professor singled her out to solve an impossible equation, smirks spread through the audience. What they didn't know was that they were about to witness a historic moment in mathematics, and the most satisfying reversal this university had ever seen. The lecture hall at Texas State University buzzed as Professor Richard Harrington strode to the podium. His reputation was legendary: brilliant mathematician, head of the department, and notorious for openly belittling those he deemed unworthy. His silver beard, crisp blue suit, and cutting gaze commanded attention. When his eyes landed on Sarah Mitchell in the back row, his expression flickered with quiet disapproval. Sarah, 37, adjusted her cardigan over her blouse. She knew that look, the quick dismissal. She'd seen it when she applied for a custodial position at the university 3 years earlier. Today, though, she wasn't there to blend in. She was there to learn. The symposium opened with graduate presentations. Sarah filled her notebook with careful notes, her eyes brightening at the mention of theories she had studied late into the night while working double shifts to raise her daughter. She never raised her hand. Rooms like this had long taught her that people like her were expected to remain silent. During the break, she overheard whispers. "Ooze the cleaning lady taking notes." One student chuckled. "Probably just auditing. Harrington hates outsiders in these sessions," another replied. Sarah's grip tightened on her notebook, but she kept her composure. They didn't know mathematics had been her secret world since childhood, or that she had taught herself advanced calculus alone, in stolen hours most people spent sleeping. When the symposium resumed, Harrington launched into his controversial take on an unsolved problem. His explanation was impressive, elegant, persuasive, but Sarah immediately spotted a flaw. She'd spent countless nights exploring that very equation. "Any questions?" Harrington asked, his tone implying that none would be worth his time. Almost against her will, Sarah's hand went up. The room fell silent, heads turning. Harrington's eyebrows arched in mock surprise.
"Yes, Mum,"
he said, his voice dripping condescension. Sarah swallowed. In step 4, the variable transformation. Wouldn't that create inconsistencies when applied to the boundary conditions? The lecture hall stilled. Students exchanged wary glances. Harrington's face hardened. "Your name?" he demanded. "Sarah Mitchell." "And your department?" "I work in facilities management." Gasps and whispers spread like wildfire. Harrington's amusement deepened. "Facilities management," he repeated slowly, savoring the words. "And you believe you found an error in my work?" Sarah's cheeks flushed. "Not an error, exactly, just a potential complication that, perhaps," Harrington cut her off sharply. "Instead of questioning advanced mathematics, you might focus on more accessible pursuits." Laughter broke out. Sarah's face burned as she sank lower in her chair, wishing she'd kept quiet. But Harrington wasn't finished. Spotting an easy target, he decided to press his advantage. "Since our guest from facilities management seems so confident, perhaps she'd like to demonstrate her expertise." He turned to the chalkboard. "Come forward, Ms. Mitchell." Sarah froze. Every instinct screamed at her to decline, to escape. But another voice, fueled by pride and years of being underestimated, rose louder. Slowly she stood. Her footsteps echoed through the hall, whispers trailing behind her like shadows. Harrington handed her a stick of chalk with theatrical flourish. "Let's make this accessible," he announced loudly. The word dripped with contempt. He scrawled a complex differential equation across the board, advanced, intimidating, and chosen to humiliate. Sarah recognized it instantly. It wasn't impossible, just difficult. The challenge wasn't solving the math. It was doing it here, with the weight of ridicule pressing down on her. "Take your time," Harrington said mockingly. "We're all eager to learn from diverse perspectives." Laughter rippled again. Sarah's hand trembled slightly as she studied the board. Behind her, someone whispered, "This is painful to watch." But in the front row, Dr. Elizabeth Chen, a visiting MIT professor, didn't laugh. She narrowed her eyes, not at Sarah, but at Harrington, watching the quiet woman with a flicker of curiosity. Sarah inhaled deeply, steadying herself. The symbols on the chalkboard seemed to shift, aligning into familiar patterns. Numbers had always been her secret refuge. Long nights after her husband left, quiet hours after her daughter was asleep, breaks stolen between scrubbing floors and emptying trash bins. She lifted the chalk and made her first mark. "Perhaps we should simplify," Harrington began, but the words caught in his throat as Sarah moved with steady precision. The lecture hall fell into absolute silence. Line after line appeared under her hand, each step deliberate, each calculation confident. Her earlier nerves melted away as she sank into the rhythm she had known since childhood. the elegant, private language of mathematics. She wasn't in a hostile hall anymore. She was home in her mind where numbers always made sense. 2 minutes later, she set down the chalk. Harrington's smug expression faltered into confusion. He leaned closer, scanning her work, searching desperately for an error. There was none. Her solution wasn't just correct, it was beautiful in its clarity. "That is correct," he admitted grudgingly. Though, of course, any trained mathematician could. But his words trailed off as Dr. Elizabeth Chen in the front row arched an eyebrow, exchanging a meaningful glance with her colleague. Unwilling to concede, Harrington snatched up the eraser and wiped the board clean. "Let's try something more advanced," he said sharply. His tone carried a blade's edge. "Something from my own research." He wrote a sprawling equation that looked nothing like standard coursework. This was frontier mathematics, the kind buried in specialized journals and whispered about in research labs. "This," Harrington announced, "touches directly on encryption in quantum computing." His eyes never left Sarah. "If you'd prefer to sit down, of course, no one would fault you." A gauntlet thrown. The air thickened with anticipation. Surely now she would retreat. Instead, Sarah picked up the chalk again. She studied the board, her confidence wavered. This wasn't familiar ground. The notation was alien, abstract. For a moment, doubt surged. Maybe she had gone too far. Maybe Harrington was right about her place. The silence pressed in. Students leaned forward, some smirking, others almost pitying her. "As I suspected," Harrington said smoothly, reaching for the chalk. "We should move on."
"Wait,"
Sarah said softly. She tightened her grip on the chalk. Something clicked. A fragment of memory surfaced, an article she had devoured in the library during her lunch break, exploring a novel approach to encryption mathematics. She began writing again. Tentative at first, then faster, stronger. Whispers rustled through the crowd. Harrington's expression shifted from amusement to unease as Sarah carved a path through the problem with unorthodox but startling intuition. Dr. Chen leaned forward now, her eyes widening. Sarah wasn't just solving. She was innovating, weaving a solution that took unexpected turns yet somehow held together with remarkable elegance. Halfway through, the trail seemed to vanish into a dead end. Harrington's lips curved into a satisfied smirk. "A brave attempt," he said, stepping closer. But Sarah didn't back away. She stared harder at the symbols, mind racing, the rest of the world dissolving around her. Then, like a lock clicking open, she saw it. A transformation so simple, yet so profound, that the entire equation unfolded before her. She pressed forward. The only sound was chalk against slate. Gasps broke from the front row as her method revealed a pathway none of them had considered. "That's not the standard approach." Harrington snapped, his voice sharp, edged with disbelief. Sarah didn't answer. She was immersed, flowing, each step landing with absolute clarity. She wasn't just answering his challenge, she was reshaping it. The students who had mocked her sat frozen, their laughter replaced by awe. Professors whispered urgently, their eyes flicking between Sarah's work and one another. When Sarah reached the final transformation, Harrington moved to the board, studying it in mounting alarm. His finger hovered over her simplification. This step," he said, voice tight. "Where did you learn it?" Sarah finally looked him in the eye. Calm, certain. "I didn't learn it," she replied. "I just saw it." For a heartbeat, the room stood suspended. The celebrated professor and the maintenance worker, connected by a chalkboard and an equation that had just redefined the balance of power in the room. Before Harrington could respond, Dr. Chen rose from her seat. "That's the Liu Takahashi method," she announced, her voice carrying effortlessly across the lecture hall. "It was only published last month in the International Journal of Quantum Mathematics." A stunned hush swept the room. Every eye turned to Sarah as Dr. Chen fixed her with an intense gaze. "How could you possibly know this?" Sarah looked down at the chalk in her hand. For years she had hidden her gift, convinced no one would believe that a maintenance worker, a single mother, could grasp advanced mathematics. She had survived by staying small, learning in secret, her passion confined to notebooks and quiet nights. But now the spotlight had found her. She had a choice: retreat or step into her truth. "I didn't know it had a name," Sarah said, her voice steadying. "I've never studied beyond community college." "Impossible," Harrington snapped, though his voice trembled. "These concepts take years of specialized training." Dr. Chen moved closer, studying the board. "And yet here it is, executed flawlessly." She turned back. "How, Ms. Mitchell?" Sarah took a breath, the weight of the moment pressing in. She thought of her daughter, Lily, saving for college by working double shifts, watching her mother shrink herself for years out of fear of judgment. "Mathematics has always made sense to me," Sarah said quietly. Equations, they're like patterns. If I look long enough, the solutions reveal themselves. A student in the third row blurted out, but you work in maintenance. Why aren't you? Because life happens. Sarah cut in, a thread of steel in her voice. I had my daughter young. Her father left. I needed steady work and health insurance. This, she gestured to the board, doesn't pay bills or raise a child. The words landed heavy in the silent hall. Harrington's tone softened, curiosity overtaking arrogance. Then why attend this symposium? Sarah met his gaze evenly. Because I love mathematics. Because learning doesn't stop when life gets complicated. The unfinished problem loomed before her, daring her to step back, or forward. She tightened her grip on the chalk. I'm going to finish this, she said, more to herself than anyone else. The room stilled. The only sound was the chalk as Sarah moved with renewed certainty. Social hierarchies vanished. Degrees and titles meant nothing here, only truth written in numbers. She worked with fluid grace, pausing only when faced with a thorny section. Tilting her head, she made an unconventional substitution, collapsing the entire equation. Dr. Chen gasped. She's using dimensional analysis to fold the quantum variance. I've never seen it applied this way. Gasps and murmurs spread through the audience. Harrington stood rigid, color draining from his face. Sarah's solution wasn't just correct, it was original, elegant, revolutionary. When she placed the final value in a clean box and stepped back, the board glowed with revelation. This isn't just correct, Dr. Chen declared, turning to the audience. It's brilliant. She's condensed 3 steps into one transformation. This is publishable work. The students who had laughed earlier now leaned forward in awe. Professors raised their phones, snapping photos of the board. Harrington cleared his throat. While unconventional, I suppose the approach has merit, he muttered, each word a struggle. Merit, Chen challenged sharply. Richard, this could advance quantum encryption mathematics.
Do you understand?
This is groundbreaking. Sarah stood still, chalk dust clinging to her fingers, the commotion swirling around her. For her, it had never been about humiliating Harrington or impressing anyone. She had simply answered the problem the only way she knew how. Ms. Mitchell. Dr. Chen said, stepping closer, her tone softer now. Have you documented any of your other insights? Sarah hesitated. I have notebooks. Just things I've worked on at night, when I can't sleep. Harrington blinked, his pride wavering against curiosity. Notebooks, he repeated, almost to himself. Dr. Chen's eyes narrowed with curiosity. What kind of mathematics do you explore? She asked gently. Sarah shifted, suddenly self-conscious under so many watchful eyes. Different things, she admitted. Mostly number theory. Some work on prime factorization algorithms. The words landed like a thunderclap. Dr. Chen and Harrington exchanged startled glances. Prime factorization was the beating heart of modern cryptography, the frontier of some of the world's most advanced research. I'd very much like to see these notebooks, Dr. Chen said firmly. From the front row, a student leapt to his feet. That was the most amazing thing I've ever seen, he declared, and began clapping. The applause spread, hesitant at first, then swelling until it filled the lecture hall. Sarah's cheeks burned, not with shame this time, but with something new, something warm. She caught sight of a young woman in the back row nodding at her with profound respect, as though Sarah's courage had just shifted something inside her forever. For the first time in her adult life, Sarah realized she was seen, not as a cleaner, not as invisible background, but as a mind that mattered. When the applause died down, the lecture hall buzzed with questions. Professors and graduate students crowded around, eager to discuss her insights. A quantum computing professor leaned in. Your intuitive grasp of multidimensional analysis is extraordinary. Have you ever considered formal study? Sarah gave a wistful smile. Consider it?
Yes, afford it.
No. Across the room, Harrington was locked in animated discussion with the dean, his pride clearly at war with reluctant respect. Dr. Chen touched Sarah's arm gently. We need to talk about your future. MIT has fellowship programs for exceptional cases. Talent like yours cannot be left to waste. MIT. Sarah repeated, startled. Genius like this doesn't come along often, Dr. Chen said. It would be malpractice to ignore it. The crowd parted as Harrington approached, his silver beard trembling slightly. Mitchell, he said in a carefully measured tone, the department would like to review your notebooks. There may be opportunities to discuss. It wasn't quite an apology, but from him it was close. I'll bring them tomorrow, Sarah replied. Chen's eyes flashed toward Harrington. And I will be reviewing them personally, she added. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Sarah checked her phone. 5 missed calls from the babysitter. Reality tugged her back. Life outside the hall was still waiting. On her way out, a young engineering student stopped her. "Miss Mitchell, thank you." Sarah frowned softly.
For what?
"For proving that where you start doesn't determine what you can know," the student said, eyes bright. "I'm the first in my family to go to college. People underestimate me too." Something loosened inside Sarah's chest. Her courage had reached beyond equations. It had ignited possibility in others. Outside, the evening air felt charged, alive. Tomorrow, her secret notebooks, years of hidden work, would be in the hands of some of the nation's top mathematicians. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. For the first time in years, Sarah allowed herself to imagine a future where her identity wasn't defined by her uniform, but by her mind. 6 months later, Sarah Mitchell stood before a new classroom. Not as a guest, not as an intruder, but as a lecturer. She pushed up the sleeves of her gray cardigan, chalk in hand, explaining a complex theorem to rows of eager undergraduates. She was no longer hesitant, no longer shrinking. Her life had transformed with breathtaking speed. After that symposium, Dr. Chen had arranged an emergency fellowship. Within months, Sarah had published 2 papers as primary author. Her insights in quantum encryption had drawn national attention. Even Harrington, after departmental battles he eventually lost, had been forced to acknowledge her brilliance. The biggest change, though, was within her. She no longer apologized for her intelligence. She no longer hid her fire. Her daughter Lily had won a full scholarship, inspired by her mother's refusal to stay invisible. "Never be afraid to raise your hand," Sarah told her students as one shy young woman hesitated. "The question you're scared to ask might change everything, not just for you, but for everyone in the room." And as Sarah's voice carried across the lecture hall, it was clear the once invisible maintenance worker had stepped fully into the light. Sometimes the greatest minds aren't found in lecture halls. Sometimes they're the ones cleaning them.